The day I signed my divorce papers, I was carrying more than just a baby. I just didn't know it yet.
People always say you remember the biggest moments of your life. Your wedding day, the day your child is born, the day someone you trusted looks you in the eye and walks away. But nobody ever tells you how quiet betrayal can be. No screaming, no dramatic exit, just the sound of a pen scratching across paper and the soft click of a door closing behind the man who promised forever. I was 7 months pregnant when my husband divorced me. And no, there was no shouting match, no plates breaking, no tears from him, just one sentence. I can't do this anymore. Have you ever noticed how people say things like that when they absolutely can do more? They just don't want to. He said it the way someone cancels cable. Casual, detached, already checked out. I remember sitting at the small kitchen table, one hand resting on my belly, the other holding divorce papers I hadn't even realized he'd already prepared. Funny thing is, the baby kicked right then. Almost like my child knew something was wrong before I did. I looked up at him and asked the only question that made sense in my mind. Is there someone else? He didn't answer right away. That pause told me everything. But instead of saying yes or no, he said something worse. You're not who you used to be. Now let me ask you something. What exactly is a woman supposed to be at 7 months pregnant? A runway model? A personal chef? A motivational speaker? Because at that point, I was tired, I was swollen, I was scared. And apparently, that made me disposable. He told me he felt trapped, that he needed peace, that starting over would be better for everyone. Everyone. Except the woman carrying his child, except the child, except the life we built together for nearly 15 years. He slid the papers across the table and said, I'll give you a week to sign. A week. Like this was a library book. I didn't cry in front of him, not because I was strong, but because something inside me shut down. Have you ever felt that? That moment when your heart doesn't break loudly, it just goes silent. He moved out that same night, didn't even pack everything, left behind a coffee mug, a jacket, a pair of shoes by the door, things that said, I'll be back. But he never was. The next few months passed in a blur. Doctor appointments, sleepless nights, people asking awkward questions like, So, is your husband excited? And I'd smile politely and say, He's busy. Busy. That's what we call abandonment when we're still trying to be dignified. Now, here's where I need you to lean in for a moment, because this is important. I didn't fight him. I didn't beg. I didn't threaten. I signed the divorce papers quietly. No drama, no demands. People thought I was weak. My own sister pulled me aside and whispered, You're letting him get away with this. Maybe I was. Or maybe I was playing a much longer game. But at the time, even I didn't know that yet. Life after the divorce wasn't easy. I moved into a smaller apartment, learned how to stretch groceries, learned which bills could wait a few days. You learn a lot about yourself when you're alone and pregnant, like how strong silence can be, and how patience isn't about waiting, it's about surviving with grace. He sent child support checks, always on time, always minimal, enough to say he was doing his part. Never once asked how I was doing. Never once asked about the baby's heartbeat. When our child was born, I texted him. Just the facts. It's a boy. He's healthy. He replied 3 hours later, Good. That was it. No visit, no flowers, no holding his son. And if you're thinking, well, at least he'll regret it someday, I used to think that too. But years went by. Years. He remarried. Younger woman. That surprised no one. I heard about it through mutual friends. I heard about the new house, the vacations, the life he rebuilt without us. And you know what? I didn't envy him. Because by then, something else had started growing inside me. Not anger, not bitterness, clarity. You see, when someone shows you exactly who they are, you don't argue, you observe. And I was watching very closely. What he didn't know, what nobody knew, was that the day I signed those divorce papers, I was carrying something else besides a baby. Something no one had told me about yet. Something that wouldn't make sense until years later. But we'll get to that. For now, all you need to know is this. I let him believe I was struggling. I let him believe I had nothing. And I waited. Because some lessons aren't taught with words, they're taught with time. And when time finally spoke, he was the one begging. The first year after the divorce taught me something no marriage ever had. Time doesn't heal you. Responsibility does. When you have a baby depending on you, there's no room for dramatic breakdowns, no luxury of falling apart for days on end. You cry in the shower, you collect yourself, and then you get on with it. My son was colicky, up every 2 hours like clockwork. I learned how to sleep sitting up, how to warm bottles with one hand, how to smile at strangers while my back screamed in protest. Some nights I'd rock him by the window and stare out at the streetlights, wondering how a man could walk away from this. Then I'd laugh softly to myself and think, well, his loss. That laughter, that was new. Not bitter laughter, not sarcastic laughter, just acceptance. And that acceptance scared people more than anger ever would have. Friends would say things like, I don't know how you're so calm. Calm wasn't a choice, it was survival. Money was tight, but manageable. I found part-time work I could do from home, learned how to budget down to the last dollar, learned that store-brand cereal tastes exactly the same if you stop reading the box. Every now and then, I'd run into someone who knew my ex. They'd lower their voice and say, he seems happy. And I'd nod politely. Happy. That word gets thrown around so easily, doesn't it? Nobody ever asks how long happiness lasts. Years passed. My son grew from a baby into a curious little boy who asked big questions. Why doesn't Daddy live with us? Kids don't ease into hard topics. They just drop them on the table and stare at you like you're supposed to have the answer ready. So I told him the truth. Sometimes adults make choices that aren't about you. That was all. No bitterness, no blame. I refused to poison my child's heart just because mine had been bruised. And here's the thing no one tells you about being underestimated. People stop watching you. They stop asking questions. They assume your story is finished. That's when life tends to surprise everyone. About 4 years after the divorce, I got a phone call. An unfamiliar number. I almost let it go to voicemail, I usually did. But something told me to answer. The woman on the other end spoke carefully, like she didn't want to startle me. Are you related to Margaret Collins? My heart skipped. Margaret was my father's older sister. We weren't close. She lived across the country. Private, quiet, wealthy in ways that never made it into family gossip. Yes, I said slowly. She was my aunt. There was a pause. I'm calling from her attorney's office. Now, pause right here with me for a second, because this is the moment in movies where dramatic music swells and everything changes instantly. Real life doesn't do that. In real life, nothing happened. The woman explained that my aunt had passed away, that arrangements were being handled, that my name appeared in her records. Then she said something that stuck with me. "We'll be in touch when everything is settled." That was it. No numbers, no promises, no explanations. Just a door cracked open. I thanked her and hung up. Then I made myself a cup of tea and went back to folding laundry. Because when life has knocked you down before, you don't jump at every sound. You learn to wait. Months went by. Nothing. Another year passed. Still nothing. And somewhere along the way, I forgot about the call altogether. Life filled the space. School drop-offs, homework battles, birthday parties. I watched my son grow into someone kind, observant, quietly strong. And I became someone else too. Someone my ex wouldn't recognize if he passed me on the street. Not because I changed my appearance, but because I changed my center. Meanwhile, his life didn't go as smoothly as it looked from the outside. The younger wife left. That didn't shock me. The house got sold, the job changed, the vacations stopped. I heard these things the same way you hear about the weather in a city you no longer live in. Mild interest, no emotion. Then one afternoon, nearly 9 years after the divorce, I saw his name pop up on my phone. I stared at it for a long moment. Why now? I let it ring. He didn't leave a voicemail, but 10 minutes later, a text appeared. "Hey, it's been a long time. We should talk." We should talk. Those 3 words. Funny how people reach out when they need something, not when they're doing well. I didn't respond. Not because I was angry, but because I was busy. Busy living a life that no longer revolved around him. 2 days later, he called again. This time I answered. He sounded nervous, awkward, like someone rehearsing lines that suddenly didn't fit. He asked about our son. I told him he was fine. He asked about me. I said, "I'm well." There was a pause. Then he said something that made me sit down. He said, "I heard something, and I wanted to check if it was true." I didn't ask what he heard. I just waited, because patience teaches you when to stay silent. In that silence, it made him uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. Finally, he cleared his throat and said, Did you inherit something?" I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because the past had finally caught up to the present, and the truth was about to come out, whether I wanted it to or not. When he asked that question, "Did you inherit something?" I didn't answer right away. Not because I was trying to be clever, but because I was genuinely surprised by how calm I felt. There was a time when hearing his voice would have tightened my chest, made my hands shake, sent my thoughts racing back to that kitchen table and those papers. But now his voice sounded smaller, older, less certain. I said, "Why do you ask?" That's when he exhaled. Not a sigh of relief, the kind people do when they're tired of pretending. "I just heard some things," he said carefully. "I wanted to make sure you were okay." Okay. That word again. People only ask if you're okay when they're worried you're not, or when they're hoping you are. I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. "I'm fine," I said. "Why wouldn't I be?" Another pause. Have you noticed how silence becomes louder when someone has something to lose? He cleared his throat again. "I ran into your cousin last week, at the fundraiser." That caught my attention. I hadn't spoken to that side of the family in years. We weren't close, but we were cordial, the kind of relatives who smile for photos and then go back to their lives. "And?" I asked. He hesitated. "Well, she congratulated me." "Congratulated? For what?" I asked. He laughed awkwardly. "That's what I was wondering." There it was. The truth always slips out when people talk too much. He continued. She said something about you landing on your feet. Said you were always smarter than people gave you credit for. Smarter than people gave you credit for. I almost laughed out loud. That phrase alone explained more than he realized. For years, I'd been the quiet one, the accommodating one, the woman who didn't make scenes. People mistake that for weakness. They shouldn't. I said, I've always been fine. He didn't respond immediately. Then, in a softer voice, he asked, Are you seeing anyone? Ah, there it is. Let me tell you something. When someone asks that question after nearly a decade of silence, it's not about romance. It's about relevance. I answered honestly. No. He seemed relieved. Then, just as quickly, disappointed. I've been thinking a lot lately, he said. About us. About the past. Of course he had. Life has a way of making people nostalgic when the future stops looking so bright. I regret how things ended, he said. I wasn't myself back then. I let that hang in the air. Because regret without accountability is just noise. He went on. I was under a lot of pressure. I didn't handle things right. But I've changed. Changed. Another popular word. I didn't challenge him. I didn't comfort him either. Instead, I asked a simple question. Why now? He froze. You could almost hear him searching for a safe answer. I thought we should talk, he said. For our son. For our son? The classic shield. I had heard it before, from people trying to excuse selfish decisions by wrapping them in good intentions. I said, He's doing well. He doesn't need anything. That's when his tone shifted. Subtly, like someone testing the ground before stepping forward. I'm going through a bit of a rough patch, he admitted. Work's been unstable. Things haven't worked out the way I expected. Expected. There it is again. Expectations are dangerous things. He continued, I thought maybe we could meet, catch up. Meet? After all these years. I glanced at the clock, then at my son's backpack by the door, then out the window at a life I'd built quietly, carefully, without him. Maybe, I said. I'll think about it. He sounded hopeful. Really? Yes, I said, but not right now. He thanked me. Then, just before hanging up, he added one more thing. Listen, if there's anything you need help with. I almost laughed. Help? From the man who walked away when I needed him most? But instead, I said, I'll keep that in mind. After the call ended, I sat there for a long moment. Not angry, not shaken, just aware. Something had shifted. He knew something. Not everything, but enough to unsettle him. And that meant the pieces were moving. That evening, I got another call, another unfamiliar number. This time, I answered immediately. Miss Collins, a man said, this is James Parker. I'm following up regarding the estate of Margaret Collins. My heart skipped again. He explained that the final matters had been settled, that documents were ready, that I would need to come in person. In person? I asked. Yes, he said. It's significant. Significant. That word landed differently this time. Is there a problem? I asked. No problem, he replied. Just protocol. Protocol. I thanked him and hung up. And for the first time in years, I felt something unfamiliar. Anticipation. Not excitement, not greed, just the sense that a chapter long closed was about to reopen and rewrite itself. I didn't tell my son. I didn't tell my family. And I certainly didn't tell my ex. Because some truths are better revealed in person, and some lessons are best learned the hard way. The attorney's office was in a part of the city I didn't visit often. Quiet streets, old buildings, the kind of place where money didn't need to announce itself. I arrived 10 minutes early, not because I was nervous, but because being on time had become a habit. Punctuality is a form of self-respect. The receptionist greeted me politely, checked my name, and asked me to wait. As I sat there, flipping through a magazine I wasn't really reading, my phone buzzed. A text. From my ex. "Any chance you're free this week? I'd really like to see you." I stared at the message. Then I put the phone face down, because timing, I was learning, is everything. A man in his late 50s stepped out of the hallway and smiled. "Miss Collins?" I stood. He shook my hand firmly and led me into a private office. Leather chairs, framed certificates, a wall of books that had never been read for pleasure. He gestured for me to sit. "I'll be straightforward," he said. "Your aunt was meticulous." Meticulous. That word felt right. "She left very clear instructions," he continued, "and she was intentional about who knew what and when." I nodded. That sounds like her. He slid a folder across the desk. Inside were documents, not numbers, names, dates, properties listed in legal language that meant nothing to me yet. "Before we go any further," he said, "I need to ask, did anyone contact you regarding this estate before now?" I thought about my ex, the fundraiser, the cousin. "I received a call some years ago," I said. "Nothing specific." He nodded. "Good. That means her wishes were followed." There was that word again. Wishes. Not assets, not wealth. Wishes. "She believed people reveal themselves over time," he said. "She didn't like impulsive reactions." I felt my stomach tighten. This wasn't about money. This was about observation. He closed the folder gently. "I'll spare you the technicalities today," he said. "This meeting is simply to prepare you." "Prepare me for what?" I asked. He paused. "For attention." That caught me off guard. "Once certain filings are public," he explained, "your name will come up. People may reach out, some with good intentions, some without." I thought of my ex's sudden interest, his questions, his regrets. "Is there anything I should do?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "Nothing." Nothing. Don't respond, don't explain. Let us handle it. I smiled. That I could do. As I left the building, my phone buzzed again. Another message from my ex. "I know this is sudden, but I feel like we owe it to each other to talk, for closure." Closure. That word is usually code for something else. I didn't reply. That evening he called. I let it ring. Then he called again. And again. Finally, I answered. "Are you okay?" he asked immediately. "I've been worried." "Worried?" I said calmly. "Why?" He hesitated. I've been hearing things." There it was again. Things. "You keep saying that," I said. "What things?" Silence. Then, "It doesn't matter." "It always matters." "I think it does," I said. He sighed. "Look, I'm not asking for anything," he said quickly. "I just want to understand where you're at." Understand. Translation. I want to know how much power you have. I said, "I'm exactly where I need to be." That seemed to unsettle him. He changed tactics. "I've been thinking about our son," he said. "He's almost a teenager now. Maybe it's time we talked about his future." There it was. When curiosity fails, they appealed to responsibility. "What about his future?" I asked. "Well," he said, College isn't cheap, and I know you've been doing everything on your own," he trailed off. I finished the thought for him. "And now you're worried I might not need you anymore." He laughed nervously. No, that's not it." Of course it was. "I appreciate your concern," I said, "but I've got it covered." That phrase landed heavier than I intended. "You do?" he asked quickly. "Yes," I said. "I do." He was quiet. Then he said something I hadn't expected. "You always were good at pretending everything was okay." "Pretending," I smiled. "Yes," I said, "and you were always bad at seeing past it." We hung up shortly after. That night, I lay awake longer than usual, not because I was anxious, but because I could feel the story turning, like the moment in a play when the audience senses the twist coming, but can't see it yet. And neither could he. But he would, soon. It started with an email, not to me, about me. A former coworker I hadn't spoken to in years wrote, "Hey, random question, but is there something going on with you? Your name came up today." I stared at the screen. Then another message arrived from an old neighbor. "Hope you don't mind me asking, but congratulations? I saw something filed with your name." Filed. That word again. I didn't reply to either message. By the next morning, my phone felt heavier in my hand. Missed calls, texts I didn't open, numbers I didn't recognize. The attorney had warned me. Attention. That afternoon, I got a call from him. "It's begun," he said simply. "What has?" I asked. "The filings. They're public now." Public? He explained that certain records had been finalized and released. Nothing sensational, just standard procedure. But people who knew how to read between the lines, they were reading very carefully. "You'll hear from people you haven't thought about in years," he said. "Stay quiet." I promised I would. That evening, my ex showed up at my door. No call, no warning, just him standing there with a forced smile and nervous energy that hadn't existed the last time I'd seen him. He looked different. Not older, just smaller, like someone who'd lost confidence along the way. "I was in the neighborhood," he said. We both knew that wasn't true. I didn't invite him in. We stood in the doorway like strangers who shared a past neither of us wanted to touch too quickly. "I heard something," he said. Of course he did. "I figured you might," I replied. He swallowed. "People are talking." I tilted my head. "About what?" "You," he said. "About your aunt." I waited. He leaned closer, lowering his voice like the walls might be listening. "They say she left a lot." There it was. Not a number, not a detail, just a lot. I shrugged lightly. People say all kinds of things. That answer frustrated him. I could see it. He needed confirmation, needed to know whether the ground beneath him was actually shifting or if this was just gossip. "I just want to know if it's true," he said. "You don't have to tell me everything." I smiled gently. "I don't have to tell you anything." That was the moment his expression changed, because for the first time since our divorce, he wasn't in control of the conversation. He tried a different approach. "I always knew you'd be okay," he said. "You were strong." Funny how that word shows up when money enters the picture. "Back then," he continued, "I didn't realize what I had." I nodded. That's usually how it works. He shifted his weight. "I've been thinking, maybe we could talk about things. Really talk. Talk. Again." I looked past him toward the street. Now doesn't feel like the right time. His jaw tightened. When would be the right time? He asked. I met his eyes. When there's nothing left for you to gain. He flinched. That answer landed exactly where it needed to. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Finally, he said, I just want to be part of your life again. I considered that. Then I said, you walked away when I was carrying your child. You don't get to re-enter just because the story changed. Silence. The kind that doesn't need words. I should go, he muttered. Yes, I agreed. You should. As he walked away, I felt something unexpected. Not satisfaction, not revenge, just clarity. Later that night, another call came in. This one from my cousin, the same one from the fundraiser. She sounded overly cheerful. I've been meaning to call, she said. How have you been? I smiled to myself. I've been well, I replied. That's great. Listen, I was wondering if we could catch up sometime. Family is so important, you know? Family, I said politely. I'll let you know. After hanging up, I sat quietly, because this was the moment my aunt had planned for, the moment when people revealed themselves. And somewhere across town, I knew my ex was doing the math, trying to calculate what he'd lost, what he might still recover, what he might beg for. But the truth, the real truth, hadn't even surfaced yet. And when it did, it would change everything. The second meeting with the attorney felt different. The first had been about preparation. This one was about reality. I noticed it the moment I walked in. The receptionist stood up this time, smiled wider, called me Ms. Collins with a softness that hadn't been there before. Respect doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it just changes the temperature of a room. The attorney greeted me personally and led me into a larger office than before. Same calm voice, same careful movements, but this time the folder on his desk was thicker, much thicker. Before we begin, he said, I want to confirm something. I nodded. Have you told anyone the details of this estate? No, I said. I don't even know the details myself. He smiled faintly. Good. That's exactly how she wanted it. He opened the folder. Inside were maps, addresses, account statements with portions blacked out, trust documents. I took a slow breath. This wasn't imaginary. This wasn't symbolic. This was real. Your aunt, he began, didn't just accumulate assets. She structured them. Structured. She believed wealth without discipline was dangerous, he continued, so she set conditions. Conditions? That word calmed me. It meant intention. She left most of her estate in trusts, he explained, with you named as the primary beneficiary. Primary? I sat back slightly. How much? I asked quietly. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he said, let me put it this way. He slid one page forward. Just one. Your annual income from the estate alone will exceed what most households earn in a decade. I stared at the paper. My mind refused to do the math. Is that sustainable? I asked. He nodded. Very. I exhaled slowly. This wasn't lottery money. This was legacy money. The kind that doesn't scream. The kind that waits. There's more, he said. But before we go further, I need to ask something. I looked up. Do you anticipate any disputes? I thought of my ex, my cousin, the sudden interest. Yes, I said. Eventually. He nodded, as if he'd expected that. Then we'll move carefully. Carefully. Another word I appreciated. He explained that ownership of certain properties would transfer gradually, that public disclosures would be minimal, that protection had been built into every layer. She knew people would come, he said. She planned for that, too. I almost laughed. Of course she did. As I left the office, I didn't feel excited. I felt grounded. Like the ground beneath me had finally revealed its true shape. Outside, my phone buzzed. A voicemail. From my ex. I didn't listen to it right away. I drove home, picked up my son from school, listened to him talk about a science project with the seriousness only children can muster. Later that night, after he'd gone to bed, I pressed play. His voice was different now. Urgent. Hey, it's me. I think we really need to talk. Please call me back. No jokes, no nostalgia, no small talk. Just need. I didn't call him back. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table. The same table where I'd once signed divorce papers with shaking hands. Funny how life circles back like that. But this time, my hands were steady. The next morning, my cousin showed up, unannounced, with coffee, and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I was nearby, she said. Of course she was. We sat. She talked about family, about memories, about how my aunt had always admired me. Then she leaned in. So, is it true? I met her gaze. Is what true? She hesitated. That she left you everything? I smiled. I wouldn't say everything. Her eyes flickered. How much? She asked. I took a sip of coffee. Enough. That answer frustrated her. Good. I just think, she said carefully, family should stick together. I nodded. I agree, I said, when it matters. She left shortly after, and as her car pulled away, I realized something important. The story was no longer about what I'd inherited. It was about what people were willing to reveal about themselves now that they knew. And my ex? He was running out of places to hide, because soon he wouldn't just be asking questions, he'd be asking for forgiveness. And forgiveness comes with boundaries. The first time he begged, it wasn't obvious. It came disguised as concern. He started showing up more often. At school events, at the grocery store, at places he had no reason to be. Just a coincidence, he'd say with a forced laugh. Coincidences don't text you 3 times a day. Coincidences don't ask mutual friends about your schedule. Coincidences don't suddenly remember your favorite coffee. One afternoon, he waited outside the school. Our son spotted him first. Mom, he said quietly, that's Dad. I felt my chest tighten, not with fear, but with caution. He waved awkwardly. I approached calmly. Hey, he said, I was hoping I could talk to you. This isn't the place, I replied. He nodded too quickly. I know, I've been thinking about being more involved. Involved? Now? After years of absence? Our son stood between us, confused but observant. I placed a hand on his shoulder. We'll talk later, I said to my ex, not here. That night, he called again. This time, he didn't try to sound casual. I'm in trouble, he admitted. That was new. What kind of trouble? I asked. Financial, he said. Things didn't work out. I made some bad decisions. Bad decisions. Funny how those don't count when you're the one being hurt. He continued, I'm not asking for money. That's always the prelude. I just need time, a second chance. I stayed silent. I've been a good father, he added quickly. I almost corrected him. Almost. But I didn't. You left when I needed you most, I said instead. That wasn't a mistake. That was a choice. He sighed heavily. I know, and I hate myself for it. Hatred without repair means nothing. He lowered his voice. I heard you're comfortable now. Comfortable. Such a small word for such a large shift. I'm stable, I said. More than stable, he pressed. People are saying numbers. Numbers. He finally said it out loud. I don't discuss rumors, I replied. His voice cracked. I'm drowning, he said. I just need help getting back on my feet. I took a slow breath. Help comes in many forms, I said. Accountability is one of them. He didn't respond. The next day, I got a call from his mother. We hadn't spoken in years. She skipped pleasantries. I raised him better than this, she said. But he's hurting. Hurting. Another word people use when consequences arrive. I'm not his safety net, I replied gently. She paused. Are you going to punish him forever? Punish. I thought about that. I didn't punish him, I said. Life did. That seemed to end the conversation. A week later, he crossed the line. He approached our son directly, without telling me, without asking. He promised things, trips, gifts, time. Our son told me everything, because that's what trust looks like when you earn it. I called my ex immediately. You don't go around me, I said calmly. Ever. He snapped back. I'm his father. I said, you were absent. That has consequences too. He was quiet. Then his voice broke. I'm scared, he admitted. I don't recognize my life anymore. That confession was real, but it was also late. You're not scared of losing me, I said softly. You're scared of losing access. He didn't deny it. That night, I realized something else. The begging wasn't about love. It was about survival. And survival makes people reveal their ugliest instincts, which meant the final act was coming. Soon. And when it did, there would be no confusion about who held the power. It happened at a place neither of us expected. A charity fundraiser. One of those quiet, well-dressed events where people speak softly, smile politely, and judge silently. I was only there because my attorney suggested it. Visibility without explanation, he'd said. It helps frame the narrative. So I went. Simple dress, no jewelry worth mentioning, nothing that screamed money, because real power doesn't announce itself. I was halfway through a conversation about art restoration when I felt it. That familiar sensation of being watched. I turned, and there he was. My ex, standing near the bar, staring at me like he'd just found proof that gravity existed. He looked out of place, too loud, too tense, too desperate. He walked toward me quickly, ignoring the looks he was drawing. Is it true? He blurted out. No greeting, no pleasantries. People turned. I kept my voice calm. This isn't the time. He laughed, sharp and hollow. That's what you keep saying, he said, but everyone here already knows. Knows. I glanced around. Some people were watching, others pretended not to. He leaned closer. "They're saying it's in the tens of millions," he whispered. "Some are saying more." I met his eyes. "I didn't tell them that." His face drained of color. "So it is true," he said. That was the moment. Not when I confirmed it, but when he confirmed it for himself. His hands trembled. "I left you," he said slowly, as if the words were sinking in for the first time. "I left you, and you were sitting on all of that." I corrected him. "No," I said, "I wasn't." He frowned. "It came later," I continued, "and even if it hadn't, you still made your choice." His breathing grew shallow. "You could have told me," he said. "I would have stayed." Stayed. That word hit differently now. "You didn't leave because of money," I said. "You left because pregnancy made life inconvenient for you." He opened his mouth, closed it. People were staring now. Someone tried to step in. I shook my head slightly. This was his moment. He lowered his voice. "Please," he said, "we can fix this." Fix. Another empty word. "I lost everything," he whispered. "My job, my house, my reputation." Reputation. The thing he never worried about when he walked on a pregnant woman. "I just need help," he said. "I'll do anything." There it was. The begging. Not loud, not dramatic, just raw and exposed. I leaned in slightly so only he could hear me. "I needed help too," I said softly. "You didn't even look back." Tears filled his eyes. People don't know what to do with a crying man in a suit. They either look away or stare. "I was wrong," he said. "I see that now." I nodded. "I know." Silence stretched between us. Then he asked the question he'd been circling for months. "How much?" I straightened. "Enough to never need you," I said. That did it. His shoulders slumped. His voice broke. "I destroyed my own life." Yes. Yes, he had. Security approached gently, sensing the tension. I turned away before they reached us. Not because I was angry, but because I was done. Later that night, my attorney called. "You handled that well," he said. "I didn't plan it," I replied. "Your aunt did," he said quietly. I smiled, because she really had. He called the next morning. I knew he would. The begging hadn't finished the night before. It had only moved from public shame to private desperation. I let the phone ring longer than usual, not to punish him, but because I needed to be certain I was answering from the right place. When I finally picked up, he didn't speak right away. "I shouldn't have done that," he said quietly. "Last night." "No," I replied calmly. "You shouldn't have left." That stopped him. "I know," he said. "I know that now. Knowing something now doesn't undo the damage done then." "I'm not calling to fight," he continued. I need to understand." Understand. The same word again. "What do you need to understand?" I asked. "How someone like you," he hesitated, "how you ended up with all of that." I closed my eyes briefly. Not in anger, in acceptance. "Sit down," I said. "This is going to take a minute." He did. I could hear it in the shift of the line. "I didn't inherit a windfall," I began. "I inherited responsibility." He didn't interrupt. "My aunt didn't believe in sudden riches. She believed in observation, in patience, in watching how people behave when no one is rewarding them." He was silent. "I saw how you left," I continued. "I saw how I didn't collapse, how I worked, how I raised a child without bitterness." "How did she know?" he asked. She paid attention, I said. I explained the trusts, the staggered distributions, the properties managed by others, the protections. Not numbers, never numbers, but structure, scale, permanence. She didn't leave me money, I said. She left me independence. That hit him harder than any figure ever could. You could help me, he said weakly. I sighed. Help you how? Loans, support, a partnership, he said quickly. We could rebuild something. Rebuild? With what foundation? With what trust? I asked. He had no answer. I don't hate you, I said gently, but I don't owe you redemption. There was a long silence. Then his voice cracked again. I lost you, he said, and I lost our son. I corrected him. You lost access. Love doesn't disappear, but trust does. He whispered, I would give anything to go back. I wouldn't, I said. That surprised him. You wouldn't want things to be different? No, I said, because I wouldn't recognize myself if they were. That was the truth. The woman I had become, calm, grounded, unafraid, was born in the silence after he left, and I wouldn't trade her for anything. I forgive you, I added, but forgiveness doesn't mean reunion. He cried quietly, not loudly, not dramatically, just the sound of a man finally understanding the cost of his choices. I won't bother you again, he said. I hope you don't, I replied. We hung up. I sat at the table for a long time afterward, not sad, not relieved, just complete. Later that evening, my son asked me a question. Why was Dad upset at that event? He asked. I considered how to answer. Because, I said, sometimes people realize too late that they walked away from something irreplaceable. He nodded slowly. Are we okay? He asked. I smiled and pulled him into a hug. We're more than okay. We're free. And that was the inheritance that mattered most. Life didn't change overnight after that call. There was no dramatic montage, no sudden mansion, no flashing headlines, and that was exactly the point. The inheritance didn't transform my life, it confirmed it. It gave structure to what I had already built, stability to what had already survived, freedom to what had already earned it. Most days still looked the same. Mornings with coffee and quiet, school lunches packed carefully, evenings filled with small conversations that mattered more than any grand gesture. The difference was internal. I no longer moved through the world bracing for collapse. I moved with certainty. Not arrogance, not pride, certainty. People still reached out from time to time. Old acquaintances, distant relatives, even strangers with advice, ideas, and opportunities. I declined politely because peace is expensive, and I wasn't willing to trade it. My ex disappeared from our lives, not dramatically, not bitterly, just quietly, as he once had. Only this time, the silence belonged to me. Years passed. My son grew taller than me, stronger, kinder. He learned what accountability looks like by watching someone live it, not preach it. One afternoon, while helping me clean out a drawer, he found the old divorce papers. Yellowed, folded, forgotten. Is this when everything changed? He asked. I smiled. No, I said. This is when everything started. That confused him, so I explained. Some people think the worst moment of their life is the end of the story, I said. But sometimes it's just the beginning of the part where you finally become yourself. He thought about that, then nodded. That was enough. I never spoke publicly about the inheritance. I never corrected rumors. I never felt the need to. Because real power doesn't argue. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't chase validation. It waits. And it remembers. Sometimes I think about my aunt, how she watched, how she waited, how she trusted time to reveal truth better than confrontation ever could. She understood something many people never do, that betrayal doesn't deserve revenge. It deserves distance. That patience isn't passive, it's strategic, and that the greatest punishment for someone who walks away is a life well lived without them. If you're listening to this and you've been abandoned, dismissed, underestimated, let me tell you something. You don't need to explain your worth. You don't need to prove your strength, and you don't need to rush your healing. Time is not your enemy. It's your witness. And when the truth finally arrives, as it always does, you won't need to say a word, because the story will speak for you.